In this episode, a 73-year-old woman has just completed her 500th scuba dive. She is passionate about the marine environment. She's passionate about sharks. But as she surfaces on her latest dive, she fails to spot the shadowy figure of a tiger shark torpedoing towards her. Just inches from safety and halfway up the boat's swim ladder, she feels a sharp tug on her leg. Will she live to dive another day? Click like and subscribe. This is Fierce. Heidi Ernst was an avid scuba diver. She was very experienced in the underwater world. It was a passion of hers, the most enjoyable hobby, and at 73 years old, she certainly wasn't slowing down. In fact, in May 2023, she completed her 500th scuba dive, a milestone that few ever reach. She certainly had an appetite for adventure. At her home in Iowa, she was a devoted owner to her miniature schnauzer called Billy and her horse called Sunny. She was very physically fit, working as a physical therapist for almost 4 decades. Impressively, she was also a power lifter and exercise guru. In June 2023, just 1 month after her 500th scuba dive, she headed to the Bahamas, specifically Grand Bahama. Situated just 64 miles east of Florida's Palm Beach, the location is beautiful. Fringed by white flowery sands, palm trees, and turquoise blue waters, it's a stunning destination for holidaymakers. Not only that, but scuba diving in the Bahamas offers something for all diving abilities. Reef dives, shark dives, and wreck dives are popular across the islands and attract all manner of wildlife, least of all, sharks. It wasn't Heidi's first time in the Bahamas. She had been diving there for 11 years. The incredible marine wildlife and underwater photographic opportunities kept her coming back for more. On June 7th, Heidi boarded a 32-foot motorboat. The weather was warm and sunny. She wore her swimming costume and sat on the back of the boat, admiring the view as they motored toward the diving site, aptly named Junction. The sea was relatively calm as they bounced along the waves. When they arrived at the location, the boat hovered over the dive site. Heidi pulled on her fins and dive gear. She rolled into the water and submerged in a cloud of bubbles. The brilliant blue of the ocean engulfed her. The beautiful marine wildlife spread across the reef below her. She swam downwards, watching the beautiful fish as they flitted and darted within the reef. She had her underwater camera with her, something she always did, capturing each adventure, each dive into the ocean. The dive had been a success. Heidi had seen what she came to see and headed for the surface. Looking up, she saw the silhouette of the boat above her. Gently, she glided upwards, kicking her fins back and forth, propelling herself closer to the boat. With her eyes fixed on the hull of the boat above her, Heidi failed to notice a shadow closing in. Below her, a tiger shark had been watching its potential prey swimming away. Its eyes locked onto the 73-year-old as she held onto the swim ladder at the back of the boat. Heidi pulled herself up the rungs of the ladder, pulling her mask off her face and removing her regulator from her mouth. If she had known she was being pursued by a top predator, then she would have leapt out of the water. If she had known what was about to happen, then maybe she could have pulled herself out of the water in time. But just as she was handing the boatman her mask, she felt a heavy tug on one of her legs. The power of the tug almost pulled her backwards into the water. It felt like a truck had hit her. She immediately looked down and saw the terrifying head of an enormous tiger shark. Its jaws were clamped firmly around her lower leg. She felt the searing pain as it thrashed its head from side to side. The water splashed and foamed. She knew she was in real danger of being pulled into the water, pulled into the jaws of an awesome predator. She needed to fight back to stay alive, so she held on to the rung of the ladder with one hand, and with the other, she hit the shark as hard as she could, on its head and on its nose. As Heidi continued to hit the shark, it let go, blood pouring from her gaping wound into the water. One of the boat's crew shouted at her to get out of the water. She didn't hesitate. She pulled herself up the ladder and scrambled onto the boat. As she looked down at her leg, it was serious. She was losing a lot of blood. One of the crew on board, Fred Reiger, administered first aid. He tied a tourniquet around her leg. Heidi could feel her life slipping away. She thought she was going to die. She thought this was the end. She had recently lost her husband to cancer just 3 years before, and now her family was going to have to say goodbye to her. But Fred secured the tourniquet as tightly as possible. It seemed to be working. It slowed the flow of blood. The bottom of the boat was stained in red, which swirled around as the boat rocked from side to side. They motored full speed back to shore. The pain was excruciating as Heidi lay in the boat, hoping upon hope that she would make it. In the 11 years that Heidi had been diving, she had never felt threatened by any sharks she had come across. They had never shown any signs of aggression as Heidi snapped photos of them swimming around her. They were part of the marine environment, and she had swum with many of them before. She knew the dangers, and she knew how to behave around them. This attack had taken her completely by surprise. When the boat made it back to shore, Heidi was rushed to Rand Memorial Hospital in Grand Bahama's Freeport. Once she was there, she was stabilized before being airlifted to Jackson Ryder Trauma Center in Miami. She was conscious when she arrived and discussed her options with surgeons. They were limited. The wound on her calf was severe. The surgeons didn't know if they could save the leg, but they could try. If they were successful, then it could be a long, arduous road ahead of her with constant threat of infection and poor use of the limb. Heidi made the decision to have her leg amputated from the shin down. She would likely recover faster that way. It was a shock, but it seemed to be the right decision. In the days that followed Heidi's amputation, she received 6 or 7 blood transfusions and 6 surgeries. A specialist reconnected the nerves in her lower leg to her muscles with the hope of reducing pain and improving recovery. Heidi still has a long road ahead of her. She will likely need more procedures as she recovers, but for now, she is hopeful. A GoFundMe page was set up by Heidi's friend Kimberly Barnes to help cover her medical expenses and travel costs. Over a week after the attack, Heidi was still in the hospital in Miami. She hadn't been discharged and hadn't made it home to Iowa. When she eventually made it home, Heidi remained positive. She hasn't been deterred from diving and has been researching prosthetic diving fins for amputees. Her passion for marine wildlife is etched into her very being. She isn't going to give it up that easily.